This unassuming yet fearless officer would perform multiple acts of heroism and save the lives of countless men around him. Known for his trademark red beret, a teetotaler and bookish man, this Australian soldier would go on to be awarded the Victoria Cross and enhance the reputation of the legendary Australian Army Training Team Vietnam. This is the extraordinary story of Peter Badcoe, known as the Galloping Major. When I think of your typical outdoors rugged individual from Australia who might be the ideal candidate for the army, serving in a teeth arm, I think of him and I think of him. Hardy, tough as nails chaps who can handle themselves in any situation. When we covered our first two Australian real-life heroes, Kevin Dasher Wheatley and Ray Simo Simpson, I thought, yep, those two guys completely fit the mould. That said, when I looked at the picture of Peter Badcoe, I was surprised. Initially, I didn't really think he fitted that stereotype of an infantryman. More like G2, and I'm sure if you're ex-military, you'll understand. However, never judge a book by its cover. This courageous Victoria Cross recipient would go on to defy any initial stereotypes and completely challenge those first impressions. Peter John Badcock, that's right, Badcock, was born on the 11th of January 1934 in the suburb of Malvern in Adelaide, South Australia. Peter, as an adult in 1961, later changed his surname to Badcoe, so for the sake of consistency, I shall refer to Peter as Badcoe going forward. Raised as a son of a public servant, the young Peter always wanted to join the army, contrary to his father's wishes. After graduating from high school and a short stint as a clerk, Badcoe enlisted in the army in June 1950 at the tender age of 16. Badcoe clearly showed aptitude, and after a brief posting to the 16th National Service Battalion, was selected for officer training. In July 1952, he entered Officer Cadet School at Portsea near Melbourne. The Officer Cadet School, Portsea, began training officers for the Australian Army in January 1952. Portsea was established in response to the growing need for officers under the National Service Scheme during the post-war period. Over its 33 years of operation, the Officer Cadet School graduated over 3,500 cadets, including over 2,800 for the Australian Regular Army, 30 for the Royal Australian Air Force, and over 600 international students. By the time it closed in 1985, Portsea had trained an impressive 40% of all new officers commissioned into the regular army. During Badcoe's time at Portsea, the officer training course was 22 weeks, compared to the 4-year course at Royal Military College, Duntroon. A high proportion of Portsea's officer cadets, like Badcoe, were serving soldiers that were deemed suitable for commissioning. These officers, once graduated, would be allocated to the full range of Army Corps, where specialist training was undertaken. As an aside, interestingly, the nearby town of Portsea was where in 1967 the Australian Prime Minister, Harold Holt, mysteriously disappeared whilst going for a swim in the ocean. Soon after Badcoe's graduation, the Portsea course was extended to around about a year. After graduating, Badcoe was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Australian Staff Corps in December of that year. Badcoe was then allotted to the artillery, where he would serve in a variety of regimental and staff roles, as we shall see. Short and stocky, with horn-rimmed glasses and a reserved man of Methodist faith, unlike the majority of his contemporary colleagues, Badcoe neither smoked nor drank, and was not interested in the wild parties of the officers' mess. We know what you Aussies are like after a few schooners. Rather than get bladdered in the bar, a conscientious officer, in the evenings Badcoe preferred to study military history and tactics. He was known to his fellow officers as an enigmatic man of the utmost integrity with a dry sense of humour. I've seen him described as more geek than grunt, but I think that's slightly misleading, as out in the bush he was enthusiastic, bold and energetic. No latter-day keyboard warrior or pen-pushing, desk-sucking blotter-jotter. After a short posting at the 14th National Service Training Battalion in 1953, Badcoe was then transferred to the 1st Field Regiment. After a couple of years, he was then again posted into a training role for national servicemen between 1955 and 1957. This was in Puckapanjal, in Victoria, known to the men as Pucka. I hope that's the correct pronunciation. I know I cocked up the pronunciation of Coogee Beach in an earlier video, so I hope I've got this one right. The first National Service Scheme, from 1951 to 59, saw over 220,000 men from across the country called up for training in the Royal Australian Navy, the Australian Army and the Royal Australian Air Force. All these chaps had to put their careers and lives on hold to serve their country. In his post at Pucka, Badcoe trained these men. In 1956, he married Denise, whom he was to be devoted to for the rest of his life. A steadfast family man, he was to be the proud father of 3 daughters. After a 1-year posting to the 1st Field Regiment again in 1957 to 58, he then spent 3 years as a junior staff officer in the Directorate of Military Operations and Plans at Australian Army Headquarters until 1961. He was also promoted to substantive captain in 1960. In June 1961, Badcoe was posted from the 4th Field Regiment to the 103rd Field Battery as a battery captain and served a tour in Malaya attached to a British unit. This occurred after the Malayan emergency, so he was not entitled to the General Service Medal, which stopped being issued for troops in theatre from 1959. During his tour in Malaya, he got to spend a week detached in November 1962 as an observer in Vietnam and got to learn how that country was combating the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese insurgency. During his Vietnam visit, Badcoe sought opportunities to experience combat. He spent 5 days with an Army of the Republic of Vietnam or ARVN battalion on operations in Quang Ngai province, during which the unit had contacts with the enemy. During what was supposed to be a rest period, he arranged a helicopter flight to visit a Montagnard base in the Central Highlands. Incredibly, when his return to Malaya was delayed by an aircraft engine breakdown, he managed to wangle joining a heliborne operation of the 7th ARVN Division in the Mekong Delta. Returning to the 1st Field Regiment in Australia after his short detachment abroad, he remained with the unit until August 1965. In that same month, he managed to transfer to the infantry and was promoted temporary major on the 10th of August. Badcoe was posted to the infantry centre at Ingleburn, near Sydney, New South Wales. After a while working at the centre, keen for more experience in Vietnam, Badcoe successfully applied for a posting with the Australian Army Training Team Vietnam. He then attended advisor courses at the Intelligence Centre at Mosman, New South Wales, and further jungle training in Queensland. It's likely Badcoe's considerable experience training recruits aided him in his application for the AATTV, as their main function was mentoring, training and advising local Vietnamese units such as regional territorial forces. You can see my earlier videos for more details on this extraordinary organisation. Needless to say, the men picked for this dangerous and demanding role were the cream of the Australian Army. Experienced go-getters who understood that from day one of being thrown into theatre in country, they would be in the deep end of the war. Far away from the ATF, the Australian Task Force, or American units, these guys would often operate alone or in small teams, with little support. Badcoe was promoted to Provisional Major in June 1966 and then deployed to South Vietnam to join the AATTV in August 1966. His first role was as a Senior Operations Officer Advisor to the staff at Nam Hoa Subsector Provisional HQ in Thua Thien Province in the vicinity of Hue. Badcoe was initially involved in planning, coordination and liaison duties with staff officers and making G3 or operational decisions. He worked with colleagues from the South Vietnam Militia Regional Force and Popular Force, known in slang as the Rough Puffs. His responsibilities would have included overseeing the training, operational effectiveness and welfare of everyone in his subsector and coordinating with his team of advisors and local militia commanders on the ground with their units. These advisors' jobs were to ensure the competence and readiness of civil defence and ARVIN units. This would ensure that they fulfilled their defence and peacekeeping purposes. Badcoe would have to command, lead and inspire his men in an often dangerous, fast-moving and chaotic environment. In the best traditions of the AATTV, Badcoe took full advantage of the freedom given to advisors to lead forces into action when the chance arose, and was in action within a week of arriving. He was soon dubbed the Galloping Major by his US counterparts, as he was always on the go. In Vietnam, he would wear a maroon red beret for easy recognition. Infectiously optimistic and an inspirational leader, Badcoe would always lead from the front. His men came to view him as invincible. Here's just one example. In his first week at Nam Hoa, Badcoe was advising a regional force company on a clearing operation when it came under fire from Viet Cong irregulars in a tree line. As the company pressed forward, it came under fire from a bunker. Badcoe unsuccessfully tried to silence the bunker using his rifle and hand grenades, at which point the company commander suggested calling in close air support. Badcoe responded that air support wasn't needed, and he collected 2 jerry cans of petrol from a jeep following the company, and then, circling around using cover, approached the bunker from outside its arc of fire. He poured both jerry cans over the bunker, backed off some distance, and then ignited it with a white phosphorus grenade, destroying the VC position and allowing the company to advance. A corporal later described meeting Badcoe out in Vietnam. An old, bright red beret sat jauntily on his head. His drab, jungle greens were almost hidden under the most amazing collection of weapons I've ever seen on one man. A Swedish submachine gun, his favourite, hung over one shoulder. It was balanced on the other side by a snub-nosed grenade launcher. On his belt, an Australian pistol hung heavily, and in one hand held an American machine gun. Always dedicated to his wife, who was his soulmate and confidant, as well as his daughters, he ensured to always write home to them, no matter how busy, and share his thoughts. Badcoe traded alcohol and souvenirs from the AATTV's canteen with US Marines to acquire improved equipment for his local Vietnamese units. A caring man, he also donated food and supplies to an orphanage. During his tour between February and April 1967, Badcoe would commit 3 separate acts of outstanding bravery, which cumulatively would lead him to be awarded posthumously the Victoria Cross, Australia's highest award for gallantry. For his first action, his citation reads, "On the 23rd of February 1967, he was acting as an advisor to a regional force company in support of a sector operation in Phu Thup district. He monitored a radio transmission which stated that the sub-sector advisor, a United States Army officer, had been killed, and that his body was within 50 metres of an enemy machine gun position. Further, the United States medical advisor had been wounded and was in immediate danger from the enemy. Major Badcoe, with complete disregard for his own safety, moved alone across 600 metres of fire-swept ground and reached the wounded advisor, attended to him and ensured his future safety. He then organised a force of 1 platoon and led them towards the enemy post. His personal leadership, words of encouragement and actions in the face of hostile enemy fire forced the platoon to successfully assault the enemy position and capture it, where he personally killed the machine gunners directly in front of him. He picked up the body of the dead officer and ran back to the command post over open ground, still covered by enemy fire. Badcoe received a US Silver Star for this action. While serving abroad, he wrote home frequently, always with great affection and a longing to see his wife and daughters, whom he referred to as little sweeties. Reportedly, Badcoe, during the service of his tour, became increasingly disillusioned with the conduct of the war. Letters to his wife recorded his experiences and challenges in Vietnam. Badcoe wrote to his wife about his concern for the South Vietnamese and his distress at needless civilian deaths and orphan children. A letter written to his wife in February 1967 states, "I spent all Sunday and half of Monday getting out the bodies and cleaning up and trying to get people a place to live and some food. What do you say to them when their houses have been burnt and their families burnt to death? I was so furious and disgusted, I don't think I said a word all day. I just couldn't speak." Around 2 weeks later, in March 1967, Badcoe would conduct his next act of bravery. His citation reads, "On the 7th of March 1967, at approximately 0645 hours, the Sector Reaction Company was deployed to Quang Dien subsector to counter an attack by the Viet Cong on the headquarters. Major Badcoe left the command group after their vehicle broke down and a United States officer was killed. He joined the company headquarters and personally led the attack in an attack over open terrain to assault and capture a heavily defended enemy position. In the face of certain death and heavy losses, his personal courage and leadership turned certain defeat into victory and prevented the enemy from capturing the district headquarters." On the morning of his final action and death, he wrote to his wife, "Only 108 days to go. I miss you and the little girls more than I can ever tell you, and I'm looking forward so very much to our holiday together." That day, on the 7th of April, when he returned from the field early in the morning, Badcoe was informed that he was required to act as sector headquarters duty officer due to the illness of another advisor. He soon became aware that an ongoing operation nearby was going badly for an ARVN force at the hamlet of An Thuan in Hong Tra district, about 12 kilometers north of Hue. The operation involved the elite Black Panther Divisional Reaction Company of the 1st ARVN Division, along with a squadron of APCs, or Armoured Personnel Carriers, and 2 reaction force companies. They were attempting to eliminate a Viet Cong force of about 2 companies, which were holding a well-entrenched position in the locality. The ARVN force had been met with intense fire and had suffered heavy casualties. Badcoe realised that the force did not have any advisors. At the time, advisors were required to work in pairs, and one of them was ill. Therefore, the other could not accompany the Vietnamese. Without any advisors, the ARVN were unable to access close air support to dislodge the Viet Cong. Badcoe knew the company would be denied air support unless an advisor was present. Arranging relief as sector duty officer, he grabbed his equipment and jumped into a jeep, along with his US Army Sergeant radio operator. He then sped to the scene. His citation reads, "On the 7th of April 1967, on an operation in Hoang Tra district, Major Badcoe was with the 1st ARVN Division Reaction Company and some armoured personnel carriers. During the move forward to an objective, the company came under heavy small arms fire and withdrew to a cemetery for cover. This left Major Badcoe and his radio operator about 50 metres in front of the leading elements, under heavy mortar fire. Seeing this withdrawal, Major Badcoe ran back to them, moved amongst them, and by encouragement and example got them moving forward again. He then set out in front of the company to lead them on. The company stopped again under heavy fire, but Major Badcoe continued on to cover and prepared to throw grenades. When he rose to throw, his radio operator pulled him down as heavy small arms fire was being brought to bear on them. He later got up again to throw a grenade and was hit and killed by a burst of machine gun fire. Soon after, friendly artillery fire was called in and the position was assaulted and captured." I just want to give credit here to Badcoe's US radio operator and Deputy Army Advisor, Sergeant Alberto Alvarado. It was Alvarado that attempted to save Badcoe's life during the engagement. When Badcoe was killed, Alvarado was shot in the leg trying to retrieve his body. Wounded, it was Alvarado that called in an airstrike and artillery that finally turned the tables after Badcoe's act of bravery. Another incredibly brave individual. I can't confirm, but I have read in one open source thread that this chap, Alvarado, was on his third tour in 1967 and was awarded a Silver Star for this action, as well as a Purple Heart. Badcoe was also posthumously awarded a second Silver Star for his actions during this engagement. Badcoe's citation ends with, "Major Badcoe's conspicuous gallantry and leadership on all these occasions was an inspiration to all. Each action, ultimately, was successful due entirely to his efforts, the final one ending in his death. His valour and leadership were in the highest traditions of the military profession and the Australian Regular Army." At the time, Badcoe's Victoria Cross was the second to be awarded to Australian troops in Vietnam. There were more to follow. Well liked and respected by his colleagues, a military funeral for Badcoe was held in Hue, the largest for any Allied soldier until that date. Aged only 33, Peter Badcoe was interned in the Terendak Garrison Camp Cemetery in Malaysia. The epitaph on his gravestone reads, "He lived and died a soldier." In the years after his death, a series of monuments and memorials have been erected across South Australia in tribute to Badcoe's bravery and inspirational leadership. Of significance, from 2004, the award for the player displaying the most courage, skill, self-sacrifice and teamwork in the Australian Football League match in Adelaide on ANZAC Day each year has been called the Peter Badcoe VC Medal. All these personal qualities embodied the personality of Peter Badcoe. In summary, for Badcoe's medals, we have Victoria Cross, Vietnam Medal, Australian Active Service Medal 1945-75 Vietnam clasp, Australian Defence Medal, US Silver Star with device for second award, Oakleaf Cluster, Purple Heart, Air Medal, Knight of the National Order of Vietnam, Republic of Vietnam Cross of Gallantry with Gold Star. I've also read he may have received the Palm and Silver Star with this as well, so I put him there. Republic of South Vietnam Wound Medal and Honour Medal. Republic of South Vietnam Campaign Medal. Some of these foreign awards may not have been authorised to wear on uniform. The AATTV was also awarded 2 unit citations, a US Army Meritorious Unit Citation and a Republic of South Vietnam Gallantry Citation with Palm. I've also added the Peter Badcoe VC Medal, seeing as it was named after this unsung hero. No doubt it means a lot to the sportsmen who received this, and helps preserve Badcoe's memory and his values. This video only scrapes the surface of Badcoe's extraordinary life and career. Hopefully this video inspires some viewers who may never have heard of Badcoe or the Australian War in Vietnam to go off and look into it further. Badcoe's Victoria Cross and medals are on display at the Australian War Memorial in Canberra. They were donated by media tycoon and philanthropist Kerry Stokes and the Government of South Australia. Reading about Mr. Stokes, it seems he does a lot to help out veterans groups and preserve Australia's military heritage, so that's really great stuff. For this video, I've used a variety of sources online for Badcoe's medal set. As with new awards, it's changed over time, and there are various different pictures of his medals. Sources range from Victoria Cross Online, the Australian War Memorial, History Trust of South Australia, artilleryhistory.org, Port Adelaide AFC, and Australian media articles, to name but a few. Again, another great memorial frame portrait for Badcoe was created by 000 Medals and Design and is displayed at the Albion Park RSL sub-branch. Thanks for watching. I hope you found some value from this, and I'll see you in the next one.